Laughter can be the best medicine, or a sign of insanity. On this episode of Moving Panels, we discuss Joker. Welcome to Moving Panels, the podcast where we discuss movies and TV shows based on, inspired by, and adapted from the world of comic books. I'm your host, Laramy Wells, and joining me today in the co-host chair are two of the people who keep me from turning into a supervillain. First up, he's here to add some sanity to our discussion, or at least try to. It's Chad Smith.
Hey guys, it's nice to be with you, despite the faces that are going on, but you know.
And of course, the main face he's talking about, she's my partner in crime, and is here to see if Joker's antics are a laugh riot or just a reason to keep a safe distance. Straight from her very first viewing of this movie, and I do mean straight from, it's Bethany Wells.
Am I even here, or is it a figment of your imagination?
Oh, I'm just gonna say your body language is the epitome of traded. I mean, I'm gonna just go ahead and
spoiler alert.
All right, well, I want to get to Bethany's initial reaction right off. We're gonna try to do this to where we don't spoil really anything. We just want to get the immediate reaction. But just real quick, we are talking about the 2019 film Joker that came out October 4th of 2019, directed by Todd Phillips, who, we'll talk more about this, but this is the guy who directed the Hangover films and Old School and Road Trip. Like, same dude directed this movie.
Great.
So Bethany and I have just sat for the little over 2 hours that this movie runs, and
it's only 2 hours. Wow.
Yeah, and we have come down and immediately going to record. So Bethany, here we go. What's the first thing that pops into your head after seeing Joker?
I was so anxious the whole entire time. I'm pretty sure my shoulders were at my elbows from the minute the movie started until they're still there.
All right. So how about this? On a scale of intrigued to I need a hug, where are you?
I would like a hug if you've got one. I didn't like it. It's too much. I'm not saying it wasn't an interesting story. I'm not saying the story wasn't told well. I'm just saying I did not enjoy that experience.
Yeah, so for those of you who have listened to the show for a while, Chad and I did the same thing. We did a one-shot the very first year of the show. Mm-hmm. We both found out we had not seen it after we had done an episode of the Dark Knight trilogy. And so we said, let's watch it and do our initial reaction. And both of us we're probably experiencing the same thing you're experiencing right now.
Yes, I would 100% agree with that.
Just this, like, what in the world did I just watch?
/ depression /
I don't feel comfortable.
Yeah, exactly. Feel strangely gross right now. And
so
yes, that noise. Yeah.
So again, without giving too much away, because we don't want to spoil in the first half of the show here, was there any specific moment that made you really start to feel the tension?
Honestly, anytime he interacted with children, and then when he started interacting with the woman that had the child, particularly when he started to follow her.
Yeah.
I was really just like, oh gosh, I really don't like where this is heading. And I'll leave it at that for now.
Yeah,
particularly anytime he acted with another human being.
Yes,
yeah. I mean, honestly, but particularly children. Like, there was something, even if it was like an innocent gesture, there was something particularly just malicious about it.
Yeah. Well, and this was in the trailer, so this isn't spoiling anything. But when he sticks his fingers in Bruce Wayne's mouth to make him smile, like, And the fact that Bruce just stands there and lets it happen. Like
I am going to have to teach our children, if a strange man sticks his fingers in your mouth, you bite the fingers.
Yeah, it was one of those, like, this guy grows up to be Batman?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, another question for you. Since, again, this movie's been out for a while, what were your expectations going in, and did the film surprise you?
Honestly, I kind of expected that vibe of the movie. Like, I listened to y'all's episode. It was a while back ago, but I listened to it. I think I've listened to another podcast that kind of discussed it, but I just, because I hadn't seen the movie, I didn't really maintain it. I just knew it was going to be a lot of, like, violence and just kind of this sense of chaos and dread and anxiety. And then, of course, I've seen the memes.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't say I was surprised by anything. There were moments that were kind of like jump scares, but it's like a jump scare that you knew was coming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Laramy walks in behind me in the kitchen, and I go, "Whoa!" And he's been there all day, and I know he's there.
Yeah. She's talking about just like a regular Tuesday. Like I just yeah. All right. So last question for you. If you had to describe Joker in one word after watching it, what would that word be?
You don't want me to use the word that just came to my brain, so give me a second.
Yeah, clean show.
And not political. I'm going to say sociopath.
Okay. All right. Nice word. All right. Chad, do you have any questions for Bethany about her initial reaction?
No, I wish I had known this was going to be part of the episode, though. I could have come up with something. No, I'm just kidding.
All right, so let's go ahead and get into it and start talking about the film. We are going to start here with some comic connections.
This is the comic book connection theme.
So while Joker isn't a direct adaptation of any specific comic, it draws heavily from various elements of the Joker's comic book origins, dating back to his first appearance in Batman #1 in 1940, where he debuted as a sinister, chaotic criminal mastermind. One major influence on the film is Alan Moore's The Killing Joke, which explores the idea of the Joker as a failed comedian who turns to crime after personal tragedies, much like Arthur Fleck does in his descent in the movie. The film also, I believe, takes from Frank Miller's The Dark Knight Returns, particularly in its portrayal of Gotham as a city plagued by crime and unrest, setting the stage for the Joker's rise. Additionally, there's a comic called Batman, the Man Who Laughs from Ed Brubaker and Doug Mankey that delves into the early days of the Joker's criminal career and some loose parallels with Arthur's transformation in the film. Though not directly adapted, the inclusion of Thomas and Bruce Wayne ties the story back to the Joker's long-standing connection with Batman's mythos, reinforcing his deep comic book roots. In the end, Arthur's smile may mirror the Joker's iconic grin, but the film reminds us that behind it lies nothing but pain and despair. All right. So, do you agree there, Chad, about the comic connections, The Killing Joke, Dark Knight Returns?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, and this is dated. Like, I didn't go back and look this up, but I remember there was like a weird instance of the director of Phillips being misquoted, that like somebody took something he said and misquoted it as that he took nothing out of the comics, that this was like a standalone property. But he was interviewed later and he was like, no, that's not actually what I said. It was not based on one comic. I'm obviously paraphrasing the whole thing. But yeah, he admits that like he took from like the entire 80-year history of the Joker in creating this. He also, I think, he referenced the movie, and now the name of the movie escapes me, but the movie that the character was actually based on. There's like a 19... It's called The Man Who Laughs, which was also the name of that one comic that I referenced. Yeah. The silent film, The Man Who Laughs, that is, if you just Google it, and you'll see the character from it who
you can obviously tell that is where the look of the Joker came from.
But the other
So-
actual comic connection that I would point out is, and I remember this because I bought it when it was brand new in like the mid 90s, and I was really big into Batman at the time. There was a run called Going Sane, in which the Joker, it's really crazy. He thinks that Batman has been killed, and so he like quits being insane. He decides to like live a normal life, and the melancholy of Arthur's life in this like parallels that a lot. Like specifically, like going to therapy. He's on medication, and that's where I think Phillips got the neighbor attraction stuff from, because that happens in that run called Going Sane. So that's I think that's where he pulled that one from. But that's my one contribution to the to the comic connections.
Well, you know, I just thought about this. I don't know why I didn't include it, but also in The Dark Knight Returns, the talk show host bit.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
All right, so let's get into this cast. Not a huge cast. There's a lot more people that are listed in the cast than you would probably think are actually in this movie. But let's name a few. We're going to start obviously with Arthur Fleck, Joker himself, Joaquin Phoenix. By the way, it was not until just a couple of days ago, as I was doing these notes, did you notice that Arthur Fleck, if you just abbreviate his first name, that it says Affleck?
No, but that's funny.
I know that's pure. That's got to be pure coincidence,
Yeah.
not an actual reference to Ben Affleck playing Batman. But yeah. So we got Joaquin Phoenix. I can't. We have to discuss this. I have to ask this question. How do you think his portrayal of the Joker compares to Cesar Romero, Jack Nicholson, Heath Ledger? Where does he stand in your minds on his performance as the Joker? Because they're all different.
Right.
So,
Yeah, very different. Oh, man, I don't know.
It's
I don't.
definitely a different take.
Yeah.
Than all the others. He does a good job. Like, he plays this character very well. It's just, I don't like it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think Joaquin Phoenix is brilliant in this. Like, what?
Yeah.
I mean, he won an Oscar.
I think your disgust is like evidence of that. You're not supposed to like this character. He is
from the second you see him.
Yeah.
You go like, I don't like it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I mentioned Joaquin Phoenix does great. He won an Oscar. This is only the second time in Oscar history in which two actors have won an Oscar for playing the same character.
That's
Heath Ledger, obviously. Yeah, Heath Ledger won, although that was supporting actor.
Right.
And then Joaquin Phoenix won Best Actor for this movie. Yeah, only the first time was for Godfather and Godfather 2.
Yeah.
Marlon Brando and Robert De Niro.
Yeah.
Funny enough, Robert De Niro.
Yeah.
Which will bring me to him. Let's talk about Robert De Niro here playing Murray Franklin. And I wonder if Todd Phillips did backflips when Robert De Niro agreed to do this movie, because this is so clearly inspired. Todd Phillips co-wrote this script with Scott Silver, and they were clearly inspired by the Martin Scorsese movies of the 70s.
Yeah.
Taxi Driver.
Yeah.
And The King of Comedy, both starring Robert De Niro.
Yeah.
And I mean, I actually read that Robert De Niro actually suggested that the character he was playing actually be, I forgot his first name, but I remember his last name's Pumpkin, from The King of Comedy.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'll spoil that movie because that movie's, old. We're, really old.
Yeah.
You should have seen it if you haven't. So in that movie, he plays a wannabe stand-up comedian. Doesn't even actually make it to being a stand-up comedian the way that Arthur does in this movie. He just wants to be a stand-up comedian. He gets infatuated by a TV talk show host played by Jerry Lewis. And then, long story short, he ends up kidnapping Jerry Lewis in order to be on the show. And pretty much, he goes insane. And I part of me was like, I would have liked to have seen that for this is now who this character has become. But I also understand why it wouldn't have worked.
Right.
Because if his character was supposed to be insane and he's interviewing Arthur, who is insane. Yeah, I get why it didn't work.
Yeah, they're two of a kind. He's no longer the like sane moral zeitgeist that character becomes during the interview.
But it's that same infatuation, the way that Arthur idolizes Murray to the point where and this is early in the movie, so this isn't spoiling too much, where he, envisions himself on the show as a audience member, not even as a guest.
Yeah.
But as an audience member.
But as an audience member that is so excited, Murray Franklin points him out and says come up here. We appreciate you being here.
You're a special boy.
And that goes into the same as Robert De Niro's character in The King of Comedy, who there's one scene where he just shows up at Jerry Lewis's house with his girlfriend and just walks in like he's supposed to be there. And it's, of course that's that
you
movie
guys don't do that.
Yeah.
I
that movie is, of course, very much a dark comedy. Like, it's meant to be kind of satirical.
Yeah.
But then you got a movie like Taxi Driver, which is, absolutely dark and sinister and all, just like this movie is. Although I will say that Robert De Niro's character in that movie ends up kind of being heroic, because he chooses to save Jodie Foster instead of committing suicide, like was his original plan. Killing the politician. That was his original plan.
Right.
It's been a while since I've seen Taxi Driver, so having to remember that. But yeah, I got to tell you, I don't know who was the one to approach Robert De Niro.
Bradley Cooper.
Yeah. Because Bradley Cooper is a producer on this film. I had heard at one point that apparently Martin Scorsese was supposed to be the director for this film, which I find so funny considering the stuff he has said about superhero movies.
Yeah, no kidding.
So I don't know if maybe when he was originally attached, that was when Robert De Niro semi became attached, and then
would that have just been too much of like Scorsese satiring himself? Like, I feel like That'd have got real meta, real
on
weird.
Top of hats.
Yeah. Like, that'd been hard to separate.
I also feel like if it had been Martin Scorsese, it would have been a Scorsese movie, not a Batman villain movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the thing. You have to realize that is what you are watching. You are watching a movie about the origin of the ultimate Batman villain. Like,
or are you?
Yeah. All right, before we start slipping into spoilers here, let's move on with the cast.
I hate you guys.
Arthur's girl next door, if you will, the next door neighbor, Sophie, played by Zazie Beetz. It is just cool to say her name, Zazie Beetz, who is not new to comic book movies. She played Domino in Deadpool 2.
Yep.
So I will just say she has a part in this movie. I don't know what much more to say that wouldn't spoil anything.
Okay, we're not spoiling things yet. Got it.
Yeah.
All right, well then I'm just going to drink my water.
So to not spoil, recap. She is in this movie.
She is in this movie.
She does a good job. Yeah, I really liked her performance.
Yep. Then we've got another great...
Stop laughing at me, Chad. I'm doing my best.
Then we have another great actress.
Although I will say I didn't know her name. I don't remember
Zazie Beetz?
No. The character's name.
Sophie.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I thought you wanted me to say Zazie Beetz again.
I think we could all say it together. Just
get it all out. Everybody Beetz. Together say Zazie Beetz. There we go. All right.
There's so many Z's in her name. Like, how lucky. That's great.
All right. Then we've got another just a fantastic actress, Frances Conroy, playing Arthur's mom, Penny Fleck, in a truly great performance, I have to admit. Of course, she's good in just about everything she does. She engulfs herself in a character so well.
Oh, yeah.
And so, I mean, just like Joaquin Phoenix does. So they worked really well off of each other. And then the only other person I put down to mention is Brett Cullen, who played Thomas Wayne, the hopeful mayor of Gotham City. He is running for mayor
slash
as the
scumbag.
Story.
Like,
yeah. They do not play him as the philanthropist, caring person he has been portrayed in all the other Batman movies.
But it makes sense, and it still kind of works in that same universe because it's being told from a different perspective.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
The rich,
yeah,
high society people are going to say, look at all he has done. Isn't he wonderful? Isn't he great? And the people who are not benefiting from that, who are basically the victims of a lot of the greed and the misuse of money and things like that, do see him as a villain.
Or so maybe just Arthur Fleck.
Yeah.
I think
honestly,
this will come full circle. Remember this.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Bethany is trying to stop herself from revealing too much. All right. So one little bit of trivia here about Thomas Wayne when it comes to this movie, and we will not go political here, but I did want to point this out. This role was supposed to be played by Alec Baldwin. He had the part. He was supposed to play the character. And it just as they started filming and all that, he had a scheduling conflict and had to back out.
So many dark jokes. I can't stop.
But I will tell you, as soon as they introduced Thomas Wayne, I can definitely tell that Brett Cullen is doing an Alec Baldwin impression of Thomas Wayne.
That's funny.
Yeah.
I also would like to point out, since I've been making Temu references the last several episodes I've recorded, that I think that this Alfred is Temu Ricky Gervais. But, whatever.
Yeah. What's funny is we all knew it was Alfred, but they never say Alfred.
Right.
They could have at least had Thomas or
we didn't need that.
Bruce.
We really didn't need it. Like, I get that, Alfred. Yes, just say it, but I don't think we needed it. We knew. We got it. We already had him say, like, what's your name? Bruce. Yeah, we know. We know you're Bruce.
We figured, no. He's Gary Wayne, the brother we've never heard. Yeah.
The very disappointing brother.
All right. Well, before we start getting into the second half of the show and start spoiling some stuff, we like to let people know who's never seen this before. Should you watch it, or should you just read some comics instead? So I have a feeling what Bethany's response is, so we'll go ahead with Bethany's response here.
So I have a list of just some really fun books that you could read instead of this. I also have other movies that you could read or watch instead of this. If you don't want to feel sad and anxious and worried the whole 2 hours, there are plenty of other things. I watched Titanic today. Was less stressed watching Titanic.
All right.
The end.
All right. Chad, how about you?
Oh, man. I don't know. Like, I said the same thing, basically, when we first recorded our first watch. Like, you need a therapy session to get through this movie. So
is that not what this is?
I could exactly.
I gave you a copay.
This is kind of what this is.
Yeah, I could not like the movie until
copay. I need you to.
Like, we sat down and talked through it, and I think it's been a long time since I heard it, but I think if you go back and listen to that, like, you can literally hear both Laramy and I, like, go from, why did we watch this terrible movie, to, like, wow, this is borderline like a piece of art. Like,
yes.
I'm not saying it's a terrible movie. I'm saying I didn't enjoy it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I feel like those are two different things. Yeah. I can appreciate that is a well-written movie, a well-directed movie, a well-performed movie. I did not like it.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think it's one you have to go into with a certain expectation. I think you should watch it. I just don't think you should do it when you're, like, in a good mood or want to have a nice evening. Like, don't sit down with your significant other like, hey, man, we should turn on Joker. This would be an enjoyable, nice night. You should think, all right, like reading The New Yorker, I need to, like, understand this and maybe see if there's something I need to get introspective about.
We all have to read Great Expectations.
Right.
Yeah.
Or at least the clip notes.
Yeah, that's exactly. I say if you haven't seen Joker, watch it.
You should.
Like,
You should watch it.
Yes, but I do agree with Chad. Like, be prepared to watch it. Don't be doing something that's going to distract you. Don't.
Every time I picked up my phone, he's like, "What are you looking at? What are you researching?" I was like, I just needed to know if Joaquin Phoenix had a cleft lip and palate. He did. And that is all.
I would suggest maybe you buy a puppy or a kitten beforehand so you can like cheer yourself back up.
Yeah.
Directly afterward.
Have yourself a comfort pillow to hold on to. So if you haven't seen it, I think all of us at least recommend you should watch it. We're not necessarily saying you're going to enjoy watching it, but we'll get into more.
On Bethany's face as you put these words into her mouth, like.
But we'll get into more of that as we start spoiling the movie in the second half of the show.
What's up, dudes? I'm Jerry D of Totally Rad Christmas, the podcast that talks all things Christmas in the 80s. Toys, movies, specials, music, books, fashion, and fads.
If it was gnarly during Christmas in the 80s, he's got it covered. Wait, is there a lot of things to talk about for the 80s and Christmas?
Well, you got the movie giants like Christmas Vacation, Scrooged, and A Christmas Story. There are TV specials like Muppet Family Christmas, Claymation Christmas Celebration, and a Garfield Christmas special.
Plus classics shown every year.
You also jam out to Last Christmas, Do They Know It's Christmas, and Christmas in Hollis. But most of all, it was a time for the most bodacious, best-selling Christmas toys ever, like He-Man, G.I. Joe, Transformers,
and Cabbage Patch Kids.
Yes, them too. We cover them all, plus much more, including standard segments like Hap Happiest Memory, Gag Me with the Spoon, The Other Half of the Battle,
and Chant with the Littles.
So tune in to Totally Rad Christmas everywhere you get your podcasts. Turn the clock back and dive into those warm and fuzzy memories.
Later, dudes.
All right, so let's talk about the movie. Spoilers galore here. We're gonna take a little trip around the spinner rack, if you will, and kind of hit some issues to talk about. I want to at least start with something light, maybe. I don't know. This was probably a hard thing to think of, but I did ask both Chad and Bethany to come up with their favorite speech bubble. So what was your favorite quote from this movie, if you have one? I mean, if you don't, that's fine. I will say mine is when Arthur says, "I used to think that my life was a tragedy, but now I realize it's a comedy." Because that, to me, sums up the entire movie in that one quote. Pretty much to sum up, this is the life of the Joker.
And is arguably the most comic book correct version of the thing that the Joker does in this movie. Sure. Favorite quote. Not the Arthur Fleck part, but the psychiatrist's response to him at the very beginning of the movie. Is it just me or is it getting crazier out there? And I like her response, it certainly is tense. Because it tells you exactly what this movie is. I really enjoy the foreshadowing that the first 5 minutes of this movie gives you. I think it's brilliant.
Bethany, did you find a quote?
I did. It jumped out at me, and as soon as it was said, I was like, that's what I'm going to use. And it was when he's giving his mom a bath, and he's talking to her about being a comedian, and she looks at him and says, "But to be a comedian, don't you have to be funny?" And I audibly laughed out loud. And it was like the one release of tension I had the whole movie.
Yeah.
That's a little bit of a kind of let's throw a little joke in there, maybe to make some people chuckle.
I wish they would have waited a few more minutes into the movie so that maybe I could have gotten a little bit more tension out with my laugh, but it's fine, I guess.
I will say, I mean, call me a sociopath, but when his friend, the little person, after Arthur has murdered the other guy, and he's letting the little guy go, and the little guy goes to leave, but he can't reach the lock.
You know, that part made me so upset, because I was like, any minute now he's going to turn on him. Any minute now he's going to turn on him. And then that happened, And
because he was the only person who was good to him. So
Is it that, or is
Does
it
that
the only
even really
person that Arthur Fleck sees like maybe
It's
beneath
beneath
him? Yeah. I think there's some sociopathy even in that. Like, so
No, I was very
he's
upset
pure
during
evil
that
to
moment
me.
because I was so upset because during that moment I was just like, he's gonna turn. I can't handle it. I'm just not gonna be able to. And he opened the door, and I was still tense,
But
the whole time until
agree
he was
with you.
out of the door.
I agree with you, but I think it's almost it's almost even more evil that he's looking down his nose at this guy. You know what I mean? Like it just is another thing that makes Arthur Fleck utterly detestable to me.
yeah, I can see that. All right, let's move on to another topic here. Again, the show's called Moving Panels, so let's talk about this. Is there anything in this movie that you feel could have been put into a comic book?
100%.
Or anything that came out of a comic book? Again, we talked about the Killing Joke, we talked about the Dark Knight Returns. So, is there any specific moments that felt comic book-ish?
The first thing that kind of jumps out into my mind is when the officers are chasing him. He's gone full Joker into the subway car, and it's full of other clowns. And they're like I feel like watching that in panel form could really just build tension of just like flash and kind of put you in the shoes of officers chasing him, of just, it's chaos. You don't know what you're looking at. You don't know anything. And so I feel like that would have been if it's not in a comic book, it would have been an interesting thing to see in one.
To me, the moment that is a panel is Joker's entrance onto the Murray show.
Yeah,
when
that
there's
was mine too.
There's the shot through you see the camera and you see the camera seeing Joker. No, not the back shot. When he comes out, you're seeing him through the camera, and you're seeing the wide shot with him, like, coming out of that. To me was 100% a panel. It immediately like crystallized as a drawn, panel to me in that moment. But
it's interesting to me that you and I both picked moments like after he had become full villain.
Right.
Because that's kind of when it starts to move into the comic book world.
Yeah.
Yeah. And again, that mine was too, although I will say mine is the one from backstage. As they're opening the curtain and he kind of strikes that pose. To me, that's a great shot.
Shout out to whoever the extra was. That's just the dude that like makes sure Cables doesn't get tied up. Who's standing next to him, who gets creeped out. Like you feel that guy's tension. As Joaquin Phoenix like strikes a weird.
Yeah.
I'm kind of wondering, was that really acting? Was Joaquin Phoenix just like super in character, and that guy was like, "What is happening?"
Well, I did read as I was doing the research for this. I did read where apparently Joaquin Phoenix did do some stuff while on set to make the cast and crew uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Which I don't know if I've ever heard of him being a method actor.
Yes. But he's pretty famously method.
Yeah.
Hopefully he didn't do any like Jared Leto crazy stuff. Sending coworkers, boxes of stuff or anything bizarre, but who knows?
All right. So I don't think we can talk about too much without talking about this. I'm gonna call this Twisted History. So there are actual real life moments that were kind of twisted a little bit, but put into this movie. Now I know Bethany and I actually discussed one because Bethany talked about like what's with all the trash.
Well, I didn't understand because I wasn't familiar with that history.
Yeah.
I was worried I had missed a line or something where why is the trash piling up? What is causing this?
Yeah, so again, there are several moments
the garbage man strike.
Yeah, yes. From the 70s and 80s of New York. Obviously, this is Gotham City, but Gotham City and Metropolis, of course, are both.
It's New York City.
Are both New York City. I know sometimes they say that Metropolis is New York and Gotham is New Jersey, but really, I mean, they're both New York. It's just the two different sides of New York. Metropolis
like Harlem,
is the
Bronx
Upper East
versus
Side.
Metropolis
Manhattan.
is of course New York. Yeah, Manhattan and Times Square and all the bright and colorful places, and then
the gentrified New York.
Yeah.
Versus
But yes, in the 1970s in New York, there was a lot of urban decay, increases in crime, increase in unemployment, and then like Chad just mentioned, there was a union strike with the sanitation workers, and so garbage was just piling up on the streets, in the alleys, because it was not getting picked up. So this definitely reflects that. If you couldn't figure it out, this movie is set in 1981. I can tell you that because of the two movies that are playing at the end at the movie theater.
Yep.
Very fitting that one of them is Zorro the Gay Blade.
Yep.
Because, of course, in the comics, it is very well known that they were going to see a Zorro film. Of course, it was the Mark of Zorro, I think, in the initial, because Bruce was a big fan of Zorro, which, of course, loosely is where he gets the idea to become Batman. So we have that. There's also in 1977, there's the infamous New York blackout and riots. So the end of this movie kind of portrays that with all the looting and the vandalism and the rioting. Of course, they tie it all to Arthur with his clown vigilante character that the media had portrayed. But also, this movie focuses on an event that happened in 1984.
Yeah.
A man by the name of Bernhard Goetz. Are you familiar with that, Bethany?
It sounds familiar, but I listen to a lot of true crime.
Yeah. So Chad, you clearly knew what I was talking about there. So you wanna tell the story of Bernhard Goetz?
I'm not super familiar with the actual crime, but I do know, remember vaguely of the famous subway shooting, like that scene where Arthur Fleck shoots the three businessmen is based on the Bernhard Goetz crime in '84. He also murdered some people
on a subway. It was now the Bernhard Goetz story. It was 4 black men. They had come onto the subway. They were causing trouble, and Bernhard Goetz shot all of them. He claimed it to be an act of self-defense. He was very similar to kind of the way the Joker is in this one. He was praised by many people, including the mayor at the time, Ed Koch, of being someone who finally was stepping up against the increased violence and the criminals of the city. Of course, that would later start to dwindle down as they just realized this man just straight up murdered 4 young black men. So yeah, they definitely took that moment and put it here and gave Arthur the exact same thing. But of course, they other than people believing that Arthur has done the right thing, they don't put this scene in a good light. Like, yes, those guys were jerks, and they do pick on Arthur and then start to kind of beat up on him, but they don't do anything that warrants being murdered.
Right.
Especially the third guy. I feel like that is, like, the first guy, you could almost argue it was an accident, or it was just like and it just so happened to hit him.
Like Arthur just fires off the gun and it just happened to shoot him directly in the head.
The second guy, okay, yeah, you really tried to kill him, and that's not great.
So I'm pretty sure he shoots the second guy a couple of times.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then he chases after the third guy.
Intentionally hunts him down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's where you go and we're out.
He'd already shot him, to be fair. Like,
he got him in the leg.
So
got him in the foot. Yeah.
So I don't know, like maybe I'm thinking this through too much, but is he somehow trying to make sure that he ties up a loose end? Or is he just in it for
I 100% think that's what he's...
Or does it matter?
I feel like that, at that
point... So
I
think it's both.
At that point, I think it becomes premeditation.
Yeah, I think it's both, because I think he chases him down because he's going, hey, I can't let this guy get away, because he's headed to the show.
Right.
Or does he know by that point that he's...
No.
I don't know if he knows by that point. So maybe that's not right. But
no, he's not headed there.
Yeah, he's not headed there, but I'm just saying I wasn't sure if he had already gotten the phone call or not. But he is like, okay, my life is already in ruins. I can't let it be ruined anymore. I've got to get this guy. And so, yeah, he chases him down. He shoots him in the back.
Mm-hmm.
And pretty sure he's killed the guy. I then think it goes into he's killing for the fun of it when he then just shoots the guy 3 more times while he's laying on the steps. So I do think there's a little bit of both of that. Yeah. All right, let's get into this because this is something I know, Chad, you and I have talked about a lot. Let's talk about the origin story. So, of course, Joker's origin has always been shrouded in mystery in the comics. It really wasn't until the Red Hood storyline that came out that they kind of gave him a backstory. So I'll ask Chad this first because I know Chad is definitely going to have something to say here. So do you think this film, the way this film attempts to humanize Joker, does that align with the spirit of the comic, or do you think the movie maybe takes too many liberties? Because I know you have feelings about the Joker's origin.
I do. I'm not a fan. Like, even that's the one thing that I will criticize, like 1989 Batman on. I do not like a Joker origin story. He's chaos embodied. He presents himself that way. I like the Dark Knight version of this. If we're talking about films, the guy that he doesn't even know his own backstory. Like he gives
a different one every time. Yeah,
bizarre things every time. Just stuff like that. So I went into watching this movie the first time disliking it because I knew that's the idea of this movie was to set up an origin story. That being said, I do think there's a caveat that I'll get into with another question that could make this a genius tie-in, if I'm right. But
okay, all right, Bethany, how about you? I mean, I know you're not huge into comic book lore and all, but yeah, Joker's pretty much never been given an origin in the comics.
So I think this movie does it a pretty good job of it because while yes, there is a backstory, yes, you're given an origin, it's still shrouded in a bit of mystery. Like, he's adopted, but was he? Like, where is the truth? Where is the fiction?
Yeah.
Where does it become something he's come up with in his own head? Where is,
because as we've said, this is being told from Arthur's point of view, and we find out probably at the halfway point is when the reveal happens that he is an unreliable narrator.
Right.
And so, because once we find out that his relationship with the neighbor,
Zazie Beetz,
was completely fabricated in his mind.
Which, when that reveal happened, I turned to Laramy and I said, that makes more sense than her saying, "You're so funny, let's date." Because I had multiple issues of like, 1, no, he's not. 2, what is happening? Where is her child? Why is she following him around? Like, any human being who had watched that stand-up would not still be following him around. Like, is she so underwritten that she's just blindly following him? And then when it turned out it was because he had imagined it, I went, oh, well, that makes sense, actually.
Yeah. I'm slightly torn about giving him the origin because creating the character of Arthur Fleck and giving him a tragic, some might even say understandable motivation for becoming the Joker, gives some depth to the character. I worry, though, that it reduces the character's, like Chad's saying, the character's chaotic nature, because it puts it too deep into mental illness, psychological trauma, failures of society. It gives all this meaning and purpose behind the Joker where that has never been the character. The character has always just been unpredictable. He's always been, again, like like we've said, mysterious. You know, we don't know things about him, which is what makes him such a foe for Batman. And so I think giving him this type of an origin does kind of diminish some of that.
I will also say, I think there is a kind of out to this that I'll get into in my own Arthur Fleck have gone crazy theory moment in a little while. But I think that this doesn't work if this is a true origin story, because this guy's an idiot. Like, if we're just being blunt, the Joker is a criminal genius. Like, he's the opening scene to The Dark Knight. The mastermind that puts together, although insane, very thought out, methodical, evil plans, but genius evil plans, not just sort of rambling through things and spontaneously shooting people and stuff like that. Like, so if this is a true origin story, I strongly dislike it.
And where Chad's going, the question that I had sent Chad, and the question he's getting into, which does bleed right into this, is, do you feel with this movie, just after watching this movie, do you think Arthur truly is the Joker, or is there a separation? Is he not the Joker from the comic books? Is he maybe just Murray actually calls him a symbol, and he inspires the person who eventually becomes Batman's foe? Because like Chad says, if this is an origin of the Joker from the comic books, there's problems. And my biggest problem, because I'm all about, that logic following a movie even within its own logic, is if he's supposed to be Batman's Joker, how does that make sense when Batman is like 10 years old in this movie and Arthur's gotta be 40, if not
he's at the
30s,
very least in his 30s, like bare minimum.
So you're talking about by the time Bruce actually becomes Batman, this Joker would be pushing 50.
Yeah.
And I don't think that works.
Not 100% undoable. But
yeah, I will say, so Todd Phillips has said that he wanted that to be ambiguous.
Yeah.
He didn't want to make it clear as to whether you just watched the origin of the comic book Joker or not. Joaquin Phoenix, however, has stated he believes he is the comic book's Joker. But again, I say no for very similar reasons as Chad. Because the Joker of the comic, he's a criminal mastermind. There's a reason why he's Batman's main evil counterpart, is because the world's greatest detective gets outsmarted by this Joker, and Batman can never figure him out. Whereas Arthur is more reactionary. He only does something based off of something that's happening to him. So it's never that planned out. But Bethany, now that you've heard both of ours, what do you think? Do you think that Arthur is the Joker of the comic books?
I mean, at the end of the day, maybe. I don't know. But like y'all said, he is supposed to be smarter, so I guess not. I don't know. Is my answer. I don't know.
So
sorry.
I'm gonna put on my comic book tinfoil hat for a second. Okay. And I think I want to give this movie more credit because I think it's so incredibly well done. I want to think that his comic book knowledge is also his, being Phillips and the other, but I want to think that Phillips and Silver wrote this to such a degree that this is the Joker's origin story from the Joker's point of view. I think this movie is 90% an elaborate lie on the Joker's part. Okay. There's so much meaningful, unfulfilled, like, stories. Like, if somebody was telling you a lie, you would go, well, that's not true. Like, there's no reason for somebody to react like that. There's no reason for this and this and this to happen. You know what I'm saying? Like, somebody who just lies a lot and you just know their line. You're like, yeah, that clearly didn't happen. Like, there are parts of this movie that are clearly written like that. So I think there are maybe 3 moments throughout this movie that are reality. I think when you see Arthur Fleck pretending to be on the show, like he sees himself coming out, onto the Arthur Murray show. He's listening to it happen on a TV. You see, that's just audio on the side. I think that moment's real. I think the moment that gave Bethany some levity could be real. And I think the very last scene of the movie in the asylum could be real. A couple reasons there. I think with it being, that's clearly an asylum, not a prison. If he had cold-blooded murdered person after person after person, he's not going to a mental institution. He's going to prison to begin with, until he can at least be tried, all that kind of stuff. So I think that virtually this entire movie is his homespun tale that's all happened in his brain that he's telling that psychiatrist we see at the very end.
I 100% agree with you. I think that as well, because I also find it funny that that's essentially kind of where the movie starts, is him sitting there talking to the psychiatrist, and then that's where the movie ends. I also can't help but say I don't think it's coincidence that those 2 psychiatrists look
a lot alike. Yes, correct.
Yeah.
I also want to point out, he told you, like in that opening scene, that he was an unreliable narrator. He's like telling her, oh yeah, remember when I told you about this? And she's like, nope. and he's like, well,
but also in that opening scene, he says that he thinks he enjoyed it better when he was locked up in the asylum.
Right.
Whatever the exact word he uses. So it's almost as if he's still there, and this is him imagining all of this. But this is him telling his story.
And so much of it would be things that Joker would glorify about himself. It makes...
Or about others.
It makes
Or
him,
about others.
Yeah. But it makes him sympathetic. Like, he's telling it from a way that, like, makes him the sympathetic villain, makes him a little more the hero. He's the people's hero. He's trying to turn Gotham over to the people, all this kind of stuff. But also stuff like, he kind of paints Bruce Wayne as an idiot. Like, he makes his Thomas Wayne a villain.
Which he's never been portrayed as before.
So you're clearly seeing that, like, from his point of view. But there's other things like, that the riot that he started is the thing that leads to the Wayne's murder. This is something that he would have taken great pride in and glorified. And so I kind of think with the mixture of, like, real world things, so it made it kind of bizarrely a thing that a psychopath, that somebody who was deeply, deeply mentally, disturbed, could accredit to themselves. We're seeing Phillips's Joker do that almost real time, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So my argument about maybe he could be the actual Joker is that scene in the end is actually present time.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I agree.
Yes, and he is telling the story as if he was there in 1981 at that same age. And like you're saying, it's he going, hey, you remember when this happened? That was because of me. You remember when this happened? Yep. That was because of me. So, the Bernhard Goetz thing, that was actually Bernhard Goetz, but I'm going to say it was
Arthur Fleck. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, but it was Arthur Fleck.
Yeah, that is my theory.
Yeah. And so that's your workaround, that if they do ever want to bring him in as, let's even say it, if they want to bring him in as Robert Pattinson's Joker,
right,
they could do it. But you brought something up. I do want to ask this question because I'm interested in Bethany's response here. Because I always think, sometimes with the villains, you go, I get it. So do you sympathize with Arthur at any point in this movie? Or is it just a complete descent into madness and the whole movie was disturbing?
I will say there are moments at the very beginning that I do go like, oh, poor guy.
Mm-hmm.
But it very quickly turns into, no, it doesn't justify anything.
Right.
In the moment, I go, like, when the kids stole his sign, I was like, oh, come on. give him a break. Give him his sign back. Come on. Oh, don't beat him up. Like, that is in the moment. I'm like, that is a crappy situation. And it's almost like he took that moment and used it to justify all of his actions throughout the rest of this movie. And that is where the sympathy ends. It ended with him leaving that alley.
Well, and I think going back to the point that Chad and I were just making too, I think that that's him starting the story of, let me tell you about how pathetic I was.
Mm-hmm.
And him trying to set up that, I want you to feel some, pity for me.
And that he's heroic. Like he sees himself as heroic, that he fought back, that he got kicked down, but he fought back, and he's now become this great man.
Well, now that you're kind of saying, though, the idea of it's him saying, like, oh, that was me, the moment where he's, like, beat up by a bunch of kids could also play, like, that could be a real moment, because it's mirrored again when the three guys on the subway kick him.
Right.
Like, it's almost the exact same scene.
Yeah.
But then he's able to turn it around and fight back.
Yep.
All right, so we've kind of mentioned this a little bit, but let's talk about after this movie, the 2019 Joker. My question is, what's next? So we've already talked about, could Arthur ever meet Batman? And Chad and I believe that there might be a workaround for that. But I'm also curious about this. Do you think that this movie and its success, because it was successful, it was the first rated R movie to go over $1 billion. Again, nominated for Oscars. Joaquin Phoenix wins the Oscar.
11 Oscars, it was heavily nominated.
Yes. So with this success, can a film like this? First question: can a film like this coexist with more traditional superhero movies? So should Arthur ever actually meet Batman? Could this type of movie exist? But my second question is, could we maybe see the same treatment for other characters? And I would even say just other villains. So, could you do this? Maybe do Batman's Rogue Gallery. Could they do a Riddler? Could they do a Penguin? Could they do a Poison Ivy? Could they bring Harley Quinn into this and do something?
So every Batman Rogues Gallery villain is going to get their Wicked treatment and get
essentially, yeah. I mean, look, this is a really obscure character, although he did show up the same year in Birds of Prey. Imagine if they did this with Black Mask.
Imagine if they did it with Mr. Freeze.
Oh, I'd see it. I'd be interested to see how you do that without actually bringing in any type of science fiction element.
Yeah.
I would be interested in that. I'd love the character of Mr. Freeze.
The MCU has successfully brought in sci-fi elements. I mean, why not?
But even, me being the Superman fan, even imagine a Luthor movie like this.
Yeah, his version of why he's the good guy.
Yeah. So Bethany, your thoughts on that?
So I think if you're going to do that, it has to be another character similar to Joker, of just an irredeemable.
But is there another character like Joker?
I mean, I would think of all the ones you mentioned, maybe Lex Luthor would be the closest. Like, he's pretty terrible.
Yeah.
And he doesn't have a lot of, like, other than Smallville, and granted, I'm not the Superman expert, but, like, other than Smallville, you really don't get a ton of, like, redeemable, sympathetic Lex Luthor stories.
Well, there are alternates of Lex Luthor, like where he's kind of the good guy, but that's a different story.
Yeah, no, there's the Elseworld stuff and all that.
Well, and even Red Sun, the
alternate, the alternate sun, yeah. So you do have those aspects, but I just think, I mean, I know that after the Robert Pattinson Batman, there's HBO Max is looking at doing the Penguin as a series.
I'm pretty sure that's in production, but
yeah, and it's probably going to show the Penguin as more of a do a lot more with the mob and the mafia.
Let's be honest, that is being made because Colin Farrell stole that movie, but
no, he did.
It was awesome.
Yeah, where you didn't even recognize him.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you got any more thoughts about that, Chad? About, actually, let me just ask you this one: Could this Joker, could he enter the actual Batman, a Batman movie?
I think he could, but like we were talking about, I think the entryway to that is that this is a very old reference, but that like Dallas moment where you just are waking up from this fever dream that was this movie. Like you're just being exposed to this was one of his many versions of why he did this, as he's being interviewed by psychiatrist after psychiatrist of what makes this dude tick.
Yeah, if you want another dated reference, the Saint Elsewhere ending.
Yeah.
Where it's
Nice.
just all in the imagination.
Yep.
It's not even Arthur Fleck. It's in the imagination of just other person who actually happens to be the Joker.
Snow globe.
So, all right. Well, let's go ahead and wrap this up. Final decision: bag it, stack it, or trade it. This is probably going to be an interesting one to discuss. And since this was Bethany's initial reaction, I'm curious to see what her final decision is. So, what do you say, Bethany?
Personally, I'm gonna trade it. I never want to watch this movie ever again. It's not for me. It is. I didn't like it. I can appreciate it for what it is. Didn't like it. Didn't want it. So that is where I am. I'm for me personally, it's a trade it. I would say if another person was into comic book stuff and enjoyed feeling awful while watching a movie, I would say give it a try. It's a ride. But for me, it's a trade it.
Chad?
So polar opposite. I'm gonna bag it, but I am gonna lie to my friends and myself and put it in like a black bag that I'm gonna tell everybody is to UV protect it, but it's really because I don't want to see it and get terrified and have bad dreams that night. So I think it's so unbelievably well done. And this is a Batman thing. Like if you're a Batman fan, it's adjacent to being a horror fan, where part of it is you enjoy the scare, you enjoy the thriller part of it, that sort of thing. For me, this movie is just so incredibly well done. Like its source material, The Killing Joke is a super disturbing comic. And yet it holds such a important place in comic books and is such a such a seminal work that I went from hating this movie to begrudgingly respecting it a lot. So it's a bag it for me.
Yeah. Just a quick question that popped into my head. What are y'all's thoughts on Joaquin Phoenix's development of the Joker laugh?
I don't know. It's unnerving for sure. The whole thing's strange. I do like that question never gets answered, whether it's actually a medical thing. It's another reason why I think it's a lie.
Yes.
Because he never actually answers it. And even when he's talking to the cops, which I think was a made up situation as well, the whole like, what do you think? Like he's not even being honest with himself.
I will put out, it is a real condition. So it's not that we're saying that this condition is not real.
Correct. Yeah.
Yes, it is a real condition. It just what we're bringing up is that the actual reason why the Joker laughs?
Yeah. Does he have it?
Yeah. Does Arthur Fleck or whoever the Joker is, does he actually have that condition? What were your thoughts of the laugh, Bethany?
I don't like it.
Okay.
Makes me sad.
Yeah. I gotta admit, I mean, no one's gonna beat the way that Mark Hamill laughed as the Joker in the animated series, or I even always enjoyed Cesar Romero's laugh.
Yeah.
But I will admit I did like the way Joaquin Phoenix, the laugh. It's almost I'm gonna say lyrical, because the way that the Joker's laughs are portrayed a lot of the times in the comics, there's a wave to them, they overlap.
Yeah.
And I do feel that Joaquin Phoenix's laugh portrays that. So I enjoyed it. But in terms of my final decision, I like the way you put it, Chad. For almost those exact same reasons, though, I said stack it. I think this
beneath
is an
other
amazing
things,
movie.
like Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're not
and
staring
that's kind
at
of the
it.
reason.
You don't
that's
walk in
kind
the
of reason.
bathroom and pee yourself a little when you see it. Like,
because like Bethany
Why
has said,
are your valuables in the bathroom?
well, if it's a stack it, it's not that
if
valuable.
it's a stack
you,
it, yeah, that's
Oh.
yeah.
You just read it, while you're contemplating
In
life.
the bathroom.
Yeah.
Yeah. But like Bethany has said, this isn't a movie I'm gonna just go, hey, let's watch Joker.
And yet that is literally what you did to me.
But that's because we were interested in doing this episode. So there was a purpose. It wasn't just for funsies.
And that purpose is misery loves company. I'm just kidding.
There you go. But yeah, the rewatchability is not there for this movie. It's a brilliant movie, as Chad has also stated. It's a brilliant movie. It deserves all the acclaim that it has gotten. But again, I don't want to rewatch it. I don't feel good when I watch it, which is the things you want out of something that I would call a baggot. That I cherish it, so much. But I agree with the way you put it as well. So I get your argument.
I will high five Todd Phillips though on that he gave us a ton of other movies that you should put on directly after watching Joker.
Yeah.
So you actually laugh at real humor again. You're not creeped out and walk around devoid of life.
No. No, you can watch this movie and then immediately switch over to Road Trip and start singing along with Scotty Doesn't Know. That
was a good laugh.
There you go. All right. Well, thanks everybody for listening. We hope you at least enjoyed this episode, even if you have seen Joker. And if you did listen throughout all this and you still haven't seen it, I still say see it. I mean, see it. You can listen to Bethany, but
if you're feeling like life's going little too good, just pop this in. It'll take you down a peg or two. You'll be all right.
Yeah, if you're a fan of movies like Taxi Driver, if you know what, another movie I didn't bring up, Falling Down with Michael Douglas. That's another movie that this very much probably takes some inspiration from.
That you also don't want to watch again.
Yeah. You know what? Let's actually bring in some recommendations. So Bethany, since we're talking about this of maybe feeling a little bit better, do you have a recommendation for a movie that maybe, I know you don't want people to even watch Joker, so do you have a recommendation of something that maybe they could watch that has somewhat of a connection
to this?
Yeah.
Oh, can you come back to me?
Sure. How about you, Chad? Any movie or comic book?
Yeah.
Maybe like pairing a bottle of wine with a meal. Like, is there a comic that someone should read to go along with watching this?
I don't know about a comic
or a movie.
I was thinking, a Jim Carrey comedy like Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless. I'm totally joking. That would be a terrible one to watch on the. You just can't tell reality anymore. You're like, oh my god, what's happening? No, I don't know. I remember watching this for the first time and just having to process it for a little while. It's a weird one in the sense that I don't know that you should pair it with anything. I think you just kind of have to live it and see it and then process it and go, man, that was crazy. But the other works that it gives homage to would be the only things. If you enjoyed this, if you go through that process and you go, I like thinking this stuff through and kind of seeing, that kind of grim side or whatever, read The Killing Joke. It's incredible. Any of those works would work.
Don't watch the animated movie. Read the comic.
Yes.
I'm the same way. I think I said I think a good recommendation would be the Man Who Laughs, the one shot.
Ooh.
Because The Killing Joke is great and wonderful, but I think maybe the one that people haven't heard a lot of and read,
and the literal origin of the character. So
it's the Joker's first encounter with Batman. The way they tell this story, very much he is a killer right off the bat, and it deals with Joker's insanity. It also has the elements of Gotham being a decaying city, society speaking, social decay. And so I think it's a good tie-in to go along with this. But yeah, Killing Joke's out there as well. And again, we also talked about the Man Who Laughs, which of course eventually led them to create a character from another multiverse called the Batman Who Laughs.
Yeah.
So yeah, a lot of things you can, if like Chad said, if you found any of this interesting, there's a lot more out there in the comics you can dive into. But we'll go ahead and end things here.
Oh, I have my recommendation.
Oh yeah,
actually.
I forgot. Yeah, you wanted us to pass. So
okay, so the movie that I think, it's not a comic book movie, but it does follow a villain's origin story. They go to great lengths. It's following their just descent into madness. And at the end of the day, they do not get what they want. And that is My Best Friend's Wedding. I would highly recommend checking that out if you missed it back in 1997.
Right.
So
or get a puppy. Remember, the kittens, maybe a small bunny.
There are musical numbers in it.
Yeah. And Julia Roberts does have that big old smile. So there's a good tie-in for you. All right, well, we'll go ahead and wrap things up here. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Rate and review the show. We appreciate it. But stay tuned. We'll do some more lighthearted stuff as we over the next few weeks. So check that out. But for today, for Moving Panels, I'm Laramy Wells, and I'll see you on the other side of the page.